What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about swim jigs. Swim jigs are definitely not something that I fished a lot of, but the other day I was out at the Lower Colorado River and got on a little swim jig pattern, and I wanted to share what I learned about it, what I felt like those fish were doing, and why I think that the swim jig was effective. And the swim jig isn't something that I fish a lot around home, and that's why I don't see it on my channel a whole lot, but I wanted to share some things that I felt like were key in getting those swim jig bites and the equipment that I was using during that trip and in those fish catches. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the swim jig itself. The one I was throwing was a 3/8 ounce 6 Sense Divine swim jig in the baby bream color. 6 Sense has some awesome swim jigs, just great color schemes. Baby bream is by far my favorite bluegill imitation. I have caught some fish here in San Diego throwing a shad pattern, and I had this swim jig paired up with the baby sungill 3.2 inch Divine swim bait, and I think that this pairing is perfect to imitate a bluegill. Out the river, I think one of the main forages for those fish are bluegill, and I think that when you can get something as realistic as this combination is, those fish just don't know what else to do other than to eat that bait. There's one. There's one. Swim jig fish. There we go. Finally got one. There we go. There we go. It's a good one too. There we go. There we go. Look at that, choked it. Choked it good. Not a bad one. We finally got one though. Took us a while. Finally caught one. Something else that I thought was key about how I had this whole thing set up was how I had it rigged. And I'm not gonna rig it for you exactly right now, but basically I had it on the screw lock. All the swim jigs comes with those screw locks on the shaft, so you just twist this bait on there and it's not coming off. You're gonna be able to catch fish after fish after fish, and this whole thing is gonna be good to go. But this is a 3.2 inch swim bait, so it's pretty small, which ends up making a pretty compact bait. So what I did is, because I wanted to make sure that I had all the action in this tail that I could get, so I trimmed a lot of the skirt down. So that way when this thing's in the water, that tail, even though it's short, isn't being impacted by the skirt itself. So I was able to make this whole package a little bit smaller, a little bit more finessey, I guess. And I think that that does make a difference in the amount of bites you're gonna get. A lot of times people say big bites, big fish, but a lot of times you gotta downsize. You gotta make that whole package a little bit smaller in order to get those fish to commit to that bait. And I think that by using a smaller swim bait and trimming my skirt down in order to make sure that my tail was getting all the action that I could out of the tail of that swim bait, really helped key those fish in on this bait, and that's what helped get more of these bites. There's one. There's one right by the boat. Swim jig fish again. There we go. There we go. That was pretty awesome. I saw this fish come up and get it. That's crazy. It's pretty cool. So when I was fishing the swim jig, I had it on a combination that I probably normally wouldn't have picked. But I had a whole bunch of different rods that didn't have line on them, and I had some rods at home, some reels off my rods and stuff like that. So my tackle was a mess, but I did have line on my 7'3" unicorn medium heavy rod and 12-pound test on my Daiwa Tatula SV. And I just said, you know what, that's not normally what I would pick, but it's close enough. So while I was fishing it, I actually thought that this was a great option. This is a super light setup. The rod's super light, the reel's super light, so I was able to really get good casts with it. It's a shorter rod, it's not a 7.6 or something like that, so I could get really accurate casts out of it. The 12-pound test seemed to really be perfect for this thing. It didn't overpower the bait, it let it really have good action, and when it came time to set the hook, I was really able to drive this hook home, because this is a pretty stout hook on this Divine swim jig. I was really able to drive the hook home with this medium heavy unicorn rod. It's also super sensitive, so as I'm fishing it, there's a lot of grass patches where I was fishing it. I was fishing super shallow. It was probably, you know, anywhere between 2 to 4 foot where I was fishing, and I'd feel that thing come through the grass, and I could really tell the difference between the grass, and I could tell the difference between that fish biting it, because they were committing to it. But I think that as this water temperature was cooling, because it was still November, the water was cooling, the water level was dropping as well, and those aren't good conditions to end up catching a lot of fish. But I think that by making that package more compact, having that lighter line, being able to fish and feel the difference between the cover and the bite was key, because then I was able to set the hook and catch that fish. And I really think that having the backbone that was in this rod really helped me get those solid hook sets. And I think that those fish just really thought this thing was a bluegill and really just honed in on it and went for it. I think swim jigs are ideal for grass scenarios. I think they're a great grass bait. I definitely think you can fish it around brush and stuff like that as well, but I think it really excels around grass. So like I said a second ago, there's all these different grass clumps all over the place where I was fishing, and the grass was starting to die, so you could really get that bait around those grass clumps, and you could pull that, you could really pop it through. So if the grass was a little bit thicker, you could really kind of get it stuck in there and really pop it out of there, and then that grass would come off the bait and everything, and you'd get a clean bait back, which is nice. It wasn't all slimy or anything like that, but the grass was starting to die, but those fish were still sitting in those grass clumps. So I was able just to cover water and really try to get around those grass clumps, whether you're going right in it, right next to it. It didn't really matter. It just, you had to be around those clumps, because I could tell that when I would get bit, I'd make a long cast and I'd be reeling that swim jig in, and I'd get bit and I'd catch the fish. And as I got up to the area where I got that bite, I could tell, I could see that grass clump, because it was such a clear water and so shallow, I could see the clump. So I knew that those fish were really sitting in those grass clumps, and they were using that as ambush points. So this swim jig would come by, they'd think it was a bluegill, and they'd go out there and they'd hammer it, and then I would be able to catch that fish. There's one. There's one. Another swim jig fish. Get in the boat. There we go. There we go. Little guy, but we caught him. There we go. Pretty fun. So I think one of the ideal ways that you can fish this thing is just a straight retrieve back. I think you can give it action. I think you can pop it. I think you can get it stuck in the grass and really rip it out of there and get that reaction bite. I think there's a ton of ways that you can fish it. I don't really think you can fish it wrong. And I think that you need those fish to tell you what they want. And I think that you can do a lot of the high jerking that they do in different parts of the country. But when I was out the other day, I was just throwing it out there and I was reeling it slow back, basically slow enough that I could still get this tail to move. Because like I said, I think that those fish were lethargic. That water level was dropping. The water temperature was dropping. So I don't think those fish were as active as they probably were a couple weeks ago when the weather was still warm. That water was still a little bit warmer. But I think that when I was able to put it in front of their faces, they're sitting in that clump of grass and they see this thing come across, and they had plenty of time to go out there and get it. It was an easy meal, so they couldn't resist it. But I think that depending on time of year, depending on conditions, I think that you can give it that little bit extra. You can give it a couple twitches as you're reeling it. You can pop it out of that grass. And I think that when you do get stuck in the grass, I think popping it out of that grass is key, because you can get those reaction strikes from those fish. As you rip it out of there, that thing just jumps out of there and those fish just can't do anything. They react to it, they go grab it, and there you go, you got a fish in the boat. So I think if you take some of the things that I talked about in today's video and kind of learn from me as I'm learning this technique as well. I don't consider myself an expert when it comes to swim jigs, but I wanted to share the stuff that I took from that trip. If you watched the old video, you saw me catch those fish on the swim jig, but I wanted to go a little bit in depth on what I think it was that really made the difference and why I got those bites versus just another day where I throw it and I don't get the bites. I think that the combination of the line size, the rod, the reel, cutting everything down to trim that skirt down, making that compact package, I think all of it really made a difference. And I think keying in on those isolated grass clumps were important as well, and just kind of covering water and running into the fish rather than kind of just sitting in one spot, just hoping the fish were there. Put the trolling motor down, covered water, and just use this as something that I could kind of almost use that as a search bait. And I think that it's great for that. And I was able to just cover water and get some of those bites. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video and I hope you learned something about swim jigs. And if you liked today's video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or anything like that after watching this, maybe something I didn't cover, make sure to ask it in the comment section down below and we'll get a conversation going. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And if you liked today's video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And I'd love for you guys to stick around and watch some more of my videos. And as always, all of the stuff that I talked about in today's video is going to be linked in the description. So go down there, check out some awesome discount codes, click around some of these links. Some of them are affiliate links. So like I'll have a 6 cents link and I'll have an Omnia fishing link for some of the products that I talked about in today's video. The Omnia ones get me a little bit of a commission. So if you buy it there, it will help me in terms of getting commission. But if you end up going to 6 cents or something like that, make sure to use that discount code because that also helps me out. I don't get a commission, but it shows that my followers are using the code and supporting me with the purchases through 6 cents. So make sure to check out the discount codes. And if you don't buy any of the stuff that I talked about in today's video, that's fine, but just save that discount code for future reference. That way it can save you money and it helps me out as well. But again, thank you guys for watching today's video. I will see you next time. See ya.